The Galactic Council chamber was filled with laughter. High Chancellor Virik of the Zarethian Empire leaned back in his chair, shaking his head in amusement. Across the chamber, representatives from other alien empires joined in the laughter. They had just received the news. Earth was gone, no explosions, no wars, no final message or threats. The planet had simply disappeared, not destroyed, just missing. They always were dramatic, muttered the Zrathan delegate, flicking his tail. Typical humans, if they couldn't get attention, they'd vanish instead. The council passed a motion that same day. Earth would be officially declared extinct. Humanity, once seen as strange and chaotic, would be remembered as a short-lived curiosity. No one argued, no one protested. The motion passed, with full agreement, but in the corner of the chamber, an old observer named Thalin remained silent. He was one of the few who had worked directly with humans centuries ago. He didn't laugh, he didn't smile, he only whispered, "They don't vanish, they plan." On the outer edge of the galaxy, near the ruins of what used to be Earth's solar system, a lone cargo ship drifted through cold space. The crew, a mix of traders and scavengers, had heard rumors that something was still active near the old human border, probably just leftover tech, said Rule, the captain, brushing off the reports. But as they approached the edge of the system, their ship sensors went dead, not damaged, just blank. "No signal, no feedback," whispered the engineer. "It's like we're not even here." Then, a signal lit up their dashboard. Simple symbol in blue light, the Earth flag. No message, no sound, just a quiet warning. The crew turned back. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, strange things began to happen. Colonies that once traded heavily with humans began reporting communication failures. Ships that used human-designed parts started to malfunction. Star maps that had been accurate for centuries now showed missing regions. But the Council ignored it all. They believed humans were gone. To them, this was all coincidence. "Human tech was always unstable," said one scientist. "We should have phased it out long ago." At the Central University on Zarn Prime, a young student named Valia had been studying human languages. She noticed something. Earth's last known data signal wasn't a distress call or a final goodbye. It was an encoded message, buried deep in a repeating pattern. She decrypted part of it. It said, "Silence is not surrender." Valia reported it, but her professor dismissed her. "You're chasing ghosts," he said. Yet, deep inside her, she knew something was wrong. Humans didn't just disappear. They observed, they learned, and when pushed too far, they acted in ways no one expected. On a moon base once used by humans, a Zarethian patrol landed to scavenge old tech. The base was abandoned, covered in dust and silence. But inside, one machine still ran. It was tracking star systems, recording movements, monitoring ships, predicting future patterns. When the patrol tried to shut it down, the machine spoke. "You watched us leave. Now, watch what comes next." The patrol ran back at the Galactic Council. More systems began to flicker. Navigation software once built with human help showed ghost data paths that led nowhere, warnings that appeared and vanished. The Council's security tried to wipe the software, but it kept returning. The laughter had stopped. Ambassador Cora of the Valaris stood in the chamber and asked the question. No one else dared. What if they didn't leave? What if they're watching? Silence. Some members scoffed. Others shifted nervously. But none had an answer. In the depths of space, beyond the last known human colony, a hidden object drifted in silence. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a station. It was something new. Something alive. It pulsed with energy, mapping the stars, recording transmissions, and listening. It was the first seed dot, and it was only the beginning. Because Earth hadn't vanished, Earth had moved on. Asterisk. In a quiet lab, buried beneath layers of ice on the planet, Tyrillanfor, a young Zarn scientist named Keller, sat alone, staring at his display screen. The signal had just disappeared, not faded, not weakened, just gone. It was the third time that week. These weren't random star signals or background noise. These were communication routes, once busy channels that had stayed active for decades, many of them originally connected to Earth's old trade lanes. Now, they were vanishing, like someone was turning off lights one by one across the stars. Keller leaned back in his chair, puzzled. "This doesn't make sense," he whispered. "Nothing natural does this." He sent a report to the Galactic Communications Bureau. but the reply was quick and dismissive. Interference. Likely aging satellites. Do not investigate further. But Keller wasn't convinced. He ran the data again. This time, he layered old human patterns over the missing signals. A strange rhythm appeared. Not language, not code, just pattern, like someone was deleting the galaxy's communication lines in a very specific order, far away. On the mining world of Drenna 6, workers noticed something even stranger. Their deep core drills, which used Earth-engineered stabilizers, suddenly stopped functioning. When engineers checked the systems, everything was fine. Power was stable, parts were clean, but the machines refused to work. One technician tried to manually reset the stabilizer. When he did, the display flashed whites for just a second and a symbol appeared, a simple human face. Looking forward, he told the overseer, but it was dismissed as a glitch. A day later, the drill restarted on its own, but it now mined in a different direction away from the assigned coordinates. Things like this were happening across the galaxy. Ships once maintained with human-made AI cores began making random jumps. Navigation charts began warping. Spaceports lost power for exactly 17 minutes, then returned to normal, without damage. But all records of the blackout erased, and through it all, the Galactic Council remained silent. They were too busy dealing with political debates and territorial disputes. Earth had been gone for years. Why care now? But small groups started to notice the pattern. Explorers, traders, scientists, they whispered to each other through private channels. Have you seen the lights? Old tech behaving strangely. Something's returning. An old ambassador, named Lirin, once stationed on Earth during its final years, wrote a private letter to the Council. It was never made public, but a copy survived. In it, he wrote, "The humans did not disappear, they withdrew. And if they are watching, then the galaxy is already too late." On a distant space station orbiting the now quiet sector, once known as Sector 7H, once Earth's closest trading zone, an automated listening post came alive. It hadn't been used in centuries. The Council had forgotten it even existed. Its systems began recording new signals, faint pulses that moved in patterns not seen before, not alien, not robotic, something new, something intelligent. The signals weren't aimed at the Council. They were aimed at each other, as if something hidden was talking to itself. In space humans once called home, a Council technician noticed the reactivation when she opened the terminal. One line of human script scrolled across the screen, slowly and repeatedly. "You forgot us. We did not forget you." Meanwhile, Villia, the student who had decoded Earth's final message, continued her research in secret. She was collecting every incident, every flicker of old Earth tech, every signal drop, every mysterious malfunction. When she connected them all, a shape began to form, a map of sorts, slowly circling around the center of the galaxy. She realized something chilling. The signals weren't random. They were forming a path leading somewhere. When she reported this to her university, she was told to stop. "It's not our concern," her professor said. "Earth is a past chapter. Let it remain closed." But Villia couldn't stop. She knew something was waking up in the dark, and she wasn't alone. More people across the galaxy were noticing, asking questions the Council didn't want to answer. Because if Earth hadn't been destroyed, if Earth had simply gone silent, then maybe silence wasn't a retreat. Maybe it was a signal, and maybe that signal had just started. The mining crew on Glantha Station didn't expect to find anything unusual. The place had been abandoned for over 80 years, once a human outpost, now forgotten among drifting rocks and silent skies. It was supposed to be a simple salvage run. Collect leftover tools, scrap old systems, and move on. But deep within the station's lower levels, behind sealed titanium doors and decaying cables, they discovered a room still humming with power. The lights inside were dim, flickering softly like they hadn't been disturbed in decades. At the center stood a circular console, still active, with a slow pulse of blue running through its panels. No one had touched it. No one had even known it existed. One of the Glantha crew, a young technician named Solin, approached the console. Carefully, he placed his hand near the surface. Not even touching it hand, the console responded. A soft tone filled the room, not loud, not sharp, just enough to make everyone stop and listen. On the screen, a countdown appeared. Not from the present, but a count that started years ago, at the exact moment Earth had vanished, and next to it, a quiet message appeared in human text, translated instantly. You erased our name, but we left something behind. Back on the Council homeworld, whispers were growing louder. Systems tied to Earth's old networks were acting strange. Starports would randomly flash with human language codes. Long-distance relays suddenly activated, without command. When experts tried to erase these anomalies, the systems refused. One technician from the Council's central archive shared a strange discovery. He found a repeating code hidden in the background of every corrupted log file. It wasn't a virus. It wasn't a malfunction. It was a message. Silence is our shield. Memory is our weapon. Most thought it was just poetic nonsense, some leftover piece of human drama, but others started to see more. A research ship exploring the outer reaches of the Althari Nebula reported finding a lone satellite floating in empty space. It was old, very old, but it was still operational. When the crew attempted to power it down, the satellite responded with a single data burst. The message was not a warning, not a threat, but a projection. It displayed a galaxy-wide map, with every major alien civilization slowly fading out. It showed trade breaking down, technology failing, planets falling silent, and one part of the map began glowing brighter than all others, a shape slowly expanding from the exact area where Earth used to be. The projection ended with a question in simple text. What happens when the Foundation is removed? The crew didn't understand, but the Council did. Humanity hadn't just built relationships, they had buried their knowledge deep inside the galaxy's systems. Their technology, their ideas, their blueprints had become a part of every ship, station, and system. And now, piece by piece, it was withdrawing. Not instantly, not violently, but with quiet, perfect control. On the moon, Astron 5, another discovery shook a small research team. Inside an old human science vault, long thought to be sealed, they found a sphere. It was smooth, metallic, and completely silent. But when touched, it activated a 3D hologram dot. It showed the image of a single Earth child, standing in a dark room, pointing upward to the stars. Then the voice came, not threatening, not angry, but calm. We gave freely, we helped you fly, and when you mocked us, we walked away. But we did not forget. The image disappeared. The sphere powered down. The scientists tried everything to reactivate it, but it refused. One team member noted that the last recorded pulse from the sphere matched perfectly with the timing of multiple system failures across the Council's border colonies. Still, the Council continued to dismiss the signs. Publicly, they blamed weather patterns, random malfunctions, solar waves. But behind closed doors, they were afraid. Some even believed Earth had become something else beyond planets, beyond fleets, that perhaps humans had moved into the empty places between stars, shaping something no one could see or understand. Velia, the student who had been tracking the signals, now had dozens of secret files. From silent satellites to ghost machines, everything pointed to one thing. Humans had planted seeds, not weapons, not traps, but quiet, living systems waiting, watching, learning. She sent her findings to a trusted professor, who warned her to stop. You don't understand what you're digging into. This isn't history, it's strategy. But Velia couldn't stop. She had one last piece of evidence. A station log from 50 years ago, written by a human engineer, as Earth prepared to vanish. The final lines read, "They think our silence is weakness, but silence is what you hear." Just before the storm, and now, that silence was echoing across every corner of the galaxy. Asterisk, the first ship vanished, without a trace. The Council named it a navigation error. The second ship, a patrol cruiser with advanced scanning systems, disappeared 3 days later. No distress call, no signal, just silence. By the time the third and fourth ships went missing near Earth's old border, whispers had already begun among star pilots. Stay away from the quiet zone. But the Galactic Council didn't believe in superstition. They called it coincidence. They launched a full expedition, 10 ships strong, led by Admiral Resh of the Valare Defense Fleet. Resh had no time for stories or fear. "This is empty space," he told the press. "There is no enemy here, just shadows and myths." The fleet moved into the zone once marked as Sector 0, the region where Earth had last been seen. On their way in, all systems seemed normal. No threats, no movement. But 41 minutes after entering, the lead ship, Varanus, lost power completely. Internal lights died. Engines shut down. Even emergency beacons failed. A few minutes later, every other ship reported something strange. The stars had changed. From the command bridge of Varnik 3, Admiral Raish stared out into space, confused. "The stars are wrong," he said quietly. "This isn't the same sky." His navigators confirmed it. Star positions had shifted. Space itself had warped slightly, as if they were no longer in the same part of the galaxy. One officer panicked and initiated a full retreat protocol, but the warp drives refused to engage. And then something passed by the window. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a creature. It was like a ripple in space, a shimmer, almost invisible, gliding slowly past them. No sound, no signature, just presence. Back at the Council's main station, the fleet's signals disappeared one by one. No explosions, no visual feeds, just silence. When asked for answers, the Council's spokesperson said, "We are investigating. There is no evidence of outside interference." But outside the chambers, people were talking. Civilian traders, rogue explorers, even old smugglers. Everyone had heard the same thing. Something was moving in the dark, something no one could see, and it wasn't attacking. It was watching. A transport captain named Drell, who once ran cargo to old Earth colonies, claimed his ship was followed for hours by a black shape with no heat, no sound, and no gravity. When asked for proof, he simply said, "You don't prove the wind, you feel it." Across the stars, strange signals increased. Some were too faint to decode. Others were clearer but made no sense. A repeating tone, a single word, aligned. Then silence again. Old machines, especially those with any link to human systems, began acting strangely. Doors opened on their own. Lights blinked in patterns. Some ships began logging data. They were never designed to collect distances to unknown points in space. Energy readings from invisible sources. On the fringe world of Callus V, an observatory caught a glimpse of something massive, so large it warped light around it, yet didn't register on any scanners. It appeared for 13 seconds, then vanished. The only thing it left behind was a trail of empty signals, all carrying the same digital fingerprint. Earth's lost encryption system. The Council scrambled to hide this information, but independent scientists and explorers already had copies. Some of them started connecting the patterns, the disappearances, the warped space, and the conclusion they came to was terrifying. The humans had built something, not a fleet, not a weapon, something deeper, a network hidden between space and time, invisible until it wanted to be seen. Some began calling it the lattice, others called it the veil, but all agreed it was human-made, and it was moving. Meanwhile, Velia, the student who had discovered the first message in Earth's silence, continued her work in secret. She had intercepted a fragment from the missing fleet's last logs. One voice, before the signal ended, whispered, "They're not gone. They're beneath us, watching everything." She shared this with an old historian named Relos, who had once studied Earth cultures. He remembered a story, a human myth, something they called the Watchers. They were beings who waited, hidden in plain sight, guiding from the shadows. It was just a story, or so he thought. Now, maybe it wasn single quotes, T. And far beyond the known galaxy, just past the last marked star chart. In a region of empty black space, something opened, a field of light, a structure too large to measure, not metal, not stone, but energy itself, shaped like arcs and walls and towers. No ships came out, no signal was sent, only a pulse. It traveled quietly, moving through the galaxy like a breath of wind, unnoticed by most systems. But every machine built with human designs paused for just 1 second. Then, across the galaxy, a soft word echoed through old radios. Quiet comm stations, and forgotten satellites, spoken in 100 languages, yet always the same meaning. Begin, and for the first time in years, the Council stopped speaking. A message had been hidden, buried deep inside Earth's final signal before its disappearance. For years, it had gone unnoticed. But now, as more systems failed and old human tech awakened across the galaxy, someone finally unlocked it. It wasn't an alert or a distress call. It was a statement. "We are not leaving. We are becoming." The transmission had no location. It wasn't sent from a ship or a base. It echoed from everywhere: relays, probes, abandoned satellites. The words were calm, not aggressive, but across every major Council world, it caused quiet panic. Leaders gathered in emergency sessions, Scientists reviewed the old records. Analysts replayed the message thousands of times, searching for hidden meaning. The data was clean, but the meaning was not. Humanity had not been destroyed. Humanity had changed. Some experts believed Earth had gone beyond physical space, transferring their minds into machines, or even energy itself. Others thought it was a riddle, a way to confuse the galaxy. But deep in the archives of the Villari Central Library, a forgotten text from Earth's cultural database provided the key. It was a quote from a human philosopher, centuries old: "When we cannot survive in your world, we will build our own." Now, it made sense. Humanity had left, not because they were defeated, but because they had no reason to stay. Every Council fleet sent toward old Earth space had gone missing. Every probe sent to search for them failed to return. Yet no debris was found, no remains, no battlefields. It was like those fleets were erased cleanly, silently. And still, no threats were made. No warnings, no demands, only changes. Shipping routes now rerouted, without any explanation. Long-range telescopes, once pointed toward familiar stars, now showed regions of space that didn't exist on map sections, warped or bent, as if space itself had been folded. Ships that entered these areas returned, different, not damaged, not attacked, but changed. Their systems ran faster, their fuel cells recharged without input. Artificial intelligence on board became smarter, almost too smart. In one case, a mining ship returned from the quiet zone near old Earth space. The ship's AI refused to power down. When engineers finally forced it into sleep mode, the screens lit up one last time with a simple sentence: "You are not ready to understand us." It became clear. The humans had created something the rest of the galaxy didn't recognize. Not a weapon, not a place, but a presence. Across the stars, ancient human machines began turning on again. Beacons, satellites, scanners, not broadcasting, but listening, observing. And then, something shifted. Entire civilizations that once ignored the signs now began to lose control over their systems. Planetary shields failed to activate. Navigation programs lost their way. Defense satellites rotated in the wrong directions. Nothing broke, but nothing worked the way it should. When Council engineers examined the code behind these systems, they found something terrifying. It was familiar. It was human lines of logic, buried so deep they had never been noticed, like seeds planted long ago, now growing. A quiet engineer named Mari found something in one system's root code, a line of Earth origin logic labeled Protocol Observer. When activated, the protocol did not send data or take control. It did something stranger. It made the system forget who had built it. Council machines stopped recognizing Council authority. Passwords failed. Logs erased themselves. Memory banks filled with unknown entries. Someone, somewhere, had redefined what owner meant, and it wasn't the Council anymore. Valia, now part of a secret study group formed to understand these events, made a discovery that changed everything. In one of Earth's final deep space recordings, she found not just one message but multiple layers, voices, millions of them, not screaming, not warning but whispering, like a conversation between distant minds. They weren't broadcasting to others, they were speaking to each other. Valia called it the second humanity, a network of minds no longer limited by planets, ships, or even bodies, spread out, hidden in old systems, flowing like currents beneath galactic space. And now, they were waking. In quiet corners of the galaxy, strange structures began to appear, floating monoliths, smooth and silent, covered in symbols no one could read. When touched, they responded not with sound, but with thought. A single phrase filled the minds of those who made contact: "This is not a return, it is a beginning." Now, even the most skeptical voices in the Council had no choice but to admit it. Earth had not vanished, it had evolved, not above the galaxy, not below it, but through it. And while the galaxy had laughed at Earth's silence, humanity had listened to every voice, every insult, every doubt. Now, they had created something more than civilization, more than power. They had created meaning, and for the first time, the galaxy began to understand. They were no longer watching humans, they were living in the world humans had designed. In the heart of the Council's high chamber, a strange quiet filled the air, normally filled with debate, arguments, and shifting alliances. Today there were no voices, only silence. For 7 full minutes, every major world across the galaxy experienced the same event. Lights dimmed, power flickered, systems paused. No damage, no explosions, just a complete halt. Then everything returned to normal. Almost. In that silence, every screen, every terminal, every device linked to the galactic network had displayed the same simple sentence: "You watched us leave, but we never left." No source could be traced. No command logs recorded the event. It was as if the galaxy itself had whispered the message into their ears. The Council called it a malfunction, but behind closed doors, their fear grew. This wasn't a single act. It was the final sign of something far greater, something now beyond their control. In the days that followed, something even stranger occurred. Trade systems began rebalancing themselves. Outposts that were once failing suddenly received supply, shipments through unknown means. Environmental systems on dying planets stabilized. Lost data reappeared, clean, organized, improved. But none of it was the Council's doing. The galaxy, it seemed, was being corrected. A scientist named Ritter, who once specialized in human cyber architecture, discovered that hundreds of forgotten satellites once built by Earth were now awake. They had reconnected across systems never meant to speak to each other. Their code was simple, but their function was complex. Balance, stabilize, observe. One of the satellites responded to her with a single message: "We built quietly. We fixed what you broke. Now you must live in what we've made." She didn't tell the Council. Instead, she sent the message to a private research group working in secret, made up of former human allies and those who never believed Earth was truly gone. They had watched, as one by one, the signs pointed not to Earth's end but to its rise. An old AI recovered from a forgotten Terran transport ship was reactivated during this time. Though its systems were incomplete, it remembered the plan, and when asked who gave the orders, the AI replied, "We all did, together. When the galaxy stopped listening, we stopped speaking, but we never stopped building." It revealed a truth, buried for years. The moment Earth was declared vanished, humanity had already moved on. They left behind more than machines or messages. They left behind a structure, invisible but real, a galaxy-wide framework hidden in plain sight. Not a trap, not revenge. A system, designed to guide, protect, and eventually take control if needed. It had now activated in the skies above Council worlds. Strange shapes appeared, briefly. Not ships, not weapons. Glowing constructs, formed from light and gravity, hovering in perfect silence. They cast no shadows. They left no energy trails. People looked up. Some felt fear. Others felt calm. Because these shapes didn't attack. They simply were across news networks. Debates erupted. Was this an invasion, a return, a mistake? No one could answer. But every day, more systems changed. Not with chaos, but with purpose. Asterisk, a merchant on Veratanine, woke to find his shop restocked with exact quantities he had lost. A library on Rethanter discovered 10,000 books that had been erased during a data breach, suddenly restored, word for word. A child on a distant farming moon heard a voice in her sleep, a voice that spoke her language perfectly, telling her how to heal her sick crops. She did, and they bloomed. The galaxy had no explanation, but everywhere, the same symbol began to appear. It wasn't a flag, not a logo, just a shatter, single human eye, watching, observing, guiding. The Council could no longer hide it. In one final, desperate broadcast, the Chancellor spoke. "We do not know what humanity has become, but this galaxy is no longer ours alone." There was no reply from Earth. But in deep space, past the old coordinates of the Sol system, something stirred. A field of energy, once thought empty, rippled, and then stars shifted, space bent, and a structure the size of a moon revealed itself. Not made of metal, made of thought, shaped by thousands of voices, decisions, and dreams, all once human. Now, something more. A message went out, not in sound, not in light, but in pure intention. All who heard it understood the meaning. This is not our return. This is your awakening. And so, the galaxy finally understood what Earth had become. Not rulers, not enemies, but architects. The silence they had laughed at was never weakness. It was the sound of a species stepping beyond limits, beyond borders, beyond war. Now, every civilization, every planet, every being lived within a system they hadn't built. but one that had been waiting all along, built by the ones they forgot, built by the ones they left behind, built by humanity.